Okay, it's 7 o'clock. A meeting of the Finance Committee is being called to order on February 7th, 2024 at 7 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber. Mr. Clerk, will you please call the rolls?
Mayor Donches. Alderman Clee.
Here.
Alderman Clemens.
Here.
Alderwoman Timmons.
Here.
Alderman Moran.
Here.
Alderman GOV is here. Alderman Thibodeau.
Okay. Also in attendance is Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, Bill Mansfield, Radio Systems Manager, Director Matt Sullivan, Jeff LaFleur is online, Dan Hudson is also here, Director Bagley, Bobby Bagley's here, Mark Saunders, and Brian Conant is also online. Is there anyone here from the public to speak? Seeing none. Communications.
Communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, in regard to Motorola Services and System Upgrade in the amount of $237,813.23 funded from 54435 Software Maintenance Communication Equipment Maintenance/General Fund. I'll make a motion to accept and place on file and approve a contract for the Biennium Radio System Upgrade with Motorola Solutions, Inc. in the amount of $237,813.23. Funding will be through Department 157, Citywide Communications, Fund 54435, Communication Equipment, Maintenance/General Fund.
Mr. Mansfield.
Good evening, Bill Mansfield. I'm the Radio Systems Manager for the city. This particular contract, as is stated in the memo that I put forth, normally comes at the beginning of the fiscal year. We did some negotiating of this particular contract, had some items taken out of the contract, and got the price reduced because it was coming in higher than what was anticipated. For the most part, this is one of a two-part contract. We pay part of it this year, and the next fiscal year we'll pay the next half of it. It allows us to upgrade our radio system, many parts of the infrastructure every 2 years. We just had an upgrade in June of the past year, June of 2023. Anything that is available after that transition, meaning the parts that are removed, they're offered out to the city. This year, the school department took advantage of some of the equipment that we were getting rid of because it was going to be beneficial to them. The next scheduled massive upgrade would be June of 2025. So that is the next round.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, all of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next, communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, in regard to purchase of lighting equipment for Ash Street Skate Park and Fusterill Court in the amount of $45,398, funded from 69200 CDBG and Your Voice, Your Choice escrow funds. I'm going to make a motion to accept, place on file, and approve the installation of a lighting system to the Ash Street, Fusterill, and skate park areas to include one pole and light structure system with the total light control LED technology and installation with Musco Sports Lighting LLC in the amount of $45,398. Funding will be through Department 181 Community Development, Fund 10,000, CDBG funds 35,398, Your Voice, Your Choice escrow funds.
Director Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And a mouthful of emotion there, certainly because of the funding sources going towards this, so thank you, Alderman Gouveia. This is the installation of a lighting system to be located between the existing futsal court and the skate park along Ash Street, close by to the Police Athletic League, if you're familiar with that, and the Los Amigos or Reverend Perkins Park. This has actually been a project that's been contemplated for a few years and came out of the Your Voice, Your Choice participatory budgeting process. And the project in total includes some improvements to the the Los Amigos Park, of course, and installation of lighting to ensure that these areas are safe and secure for users of both the skate park and the futsal court that was actually created several years ago through participatory budgeting funding as well. The system being proposed this evening is a total cost of $45,398. It's essentially one large light pole with lights that spread over both of the facilities that are referenced here. It's a delicate balance, of course, between making sure there's adequate lighting for all hours of usage and making sure that it doesn't overly impact the residential neighborhood nearby. And so there are a variety of different control elements and customization options with the lighting equipment that's being proposed so that we can strike that balance when this is actually put into place. I just want to note that we did use a cooperative purchasing agreement through a Sourcewell contract to actually seek this lighting company, but I will say, and I know that Brian Conant is online, I think he would attest to the fact that through conversations with the Parks and Recreation Department and past performance evidence of this particular type of lighting, we were very satisfied to move forward with this vendor and this specific lighting system. It has a very strong history of performance here in the city, and so we request your approval of its purchase tonight.
I just have one quick comment. So when you said about the lighting and falling, it falls within the type of lighting that doesn't affect any kind of residence that could potentially be affected on both sides of the.
That's a great question, and I think what you're asking is it dark sky compliant fully? I will say that I can't answer that question right this second, but I believe that the options allow us to achieve that level of compliance. I will say that public facilities are treated a little bit differently when it comes to how dark sky rules are enforced, because there may be a need to light a space beyond what maybe a regular commercial site would require. And so I think the objective is to limit light impact to the residential properties, but to make sure the facility is properly lit. And so I can't say it will be fully dark sky compliant, but we'll do everything we can to be sensitive to the nearby residents. And I'm sure we'll be asking for feedback from them when the lighting goes in.
Are there any other?
Thank you,
Alderman Moran.
Madam Chairwoman. Just a statement. I think it's a wonderful use of funds to allow the kids and youth of the area to use it beyond nighttime, and keep it, safe and secure.
Yeah, Alderman Moran, thank you. And I think, again, credit to Brian Conant and Director Photo, of course, for working with us on this project and being open to modifications to the hours of usage. We know it's something the neighborhood wants, and we're really excited to see it being used in these off hours that hasn't been possible in the past. There is some lighting on site now. I should be really clear about that, but this is an improvement to that and certainly a more stable and reliable system than what's there.
Great, wonderful. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Alderman Govea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one quick question really about the funding source, the Your Voice, Your Choice escrow fund. Can we just dive into that kind of a 10,000-foot level of where these funds come from and how they're allocated?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So the Your Voice, Your Choice escrow funds are, well, let me step back even from that maybe. The Your Voice, Your Choice program was established by Mayor Donchis and certainly led by members of this board several years ago. It was launched as a participatory budgeting process intended to get neighbors or residents of specific neighborhoods involved in picking an improvement that would be specifically within their neighborhood. The priority area for this to date has been in the Tree Streets area, which is one of the most vibrant, obviously, and diverse and I think underserved areas in the city. And so several years in a row, we went out to that neighborhood and we asked, what would you like to see done that would improve your space? And the first project was the futsal lighting court, and then subsequent improvements to Los Amigos were identified, which is the Perkins Park. And then subsequently, there's some ideas about the skate park and lighting and what's being done here at the futsal court to improve that space. The way that we've been funding that to date is actually, there have been two methods. For several years, the approach was to go to the escrow process subsequent to the budget, once there was surplus available, to actually seek money through that process. So that's why several years are held in escrow. In the last fiscal budgeting cycle, we actually moved this program, Your Voice, Your Choice, into the community development budget in earnest. And so we've made it a permanent part of our programming moving forward, rather than using that escrow process. And really that was a direct response to, I think, a general tone around escrows, really wanting to limit those to the extent possible, and if there are regular programs, get them into the budget. And so that's exactly what we did. These specific funds here are actually coming from a true escrow, however, so not the new budgetary numbers. Hopefully that makes sense.
Nope, that
Great.
does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I just have one other question, if you don't mind. Many of the parks close after a certain, perhaps Mr. Koenig can answer this, after a certain time. So it's not like 11 or midnight that people are out there playing and so on. Will this lighting, for safety reasons, stay on, and will those parks be open? Because I don't believe they're locked or anything else like that.
So that's a great question. I can't answer that right now. I can certainly get back to the committee with that answer. Generally it's a dawn to dusk rule for parks that are not otherwise lit. And so I'd have to speak to Mr. Khan to answer that question. I can get you a response, but I don't know at this time what our planned hours of operation will be, or whether they'll even be modified with this lighting. That's something, I think the intent is to expand them within reasonable hours, but I'd have to.
Mr. Conant is on. Did you want to answer that question?
Good evening, everyone. Brian Conant, Superintendent of Parks and Recreation Department. The parks have signage in them that talk about a 10 p.m. closure. That's what we have posted at the parks, a 10 p.m. curfew.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question perfectly. Any other questions? Yeah, sure. Alderman Govea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just over the weekend looking at the agenda and saw this come up and went to the page on your department about it. And looking through, now it states that the Los Amigos Park Improvement Plan, which is a $40,000 plan, was the one that was the highest vote getter. Was that carried through? And then this would just be going to the next item on the list?
Great question. So the Los Amigos improvements are scheduled to happen in spring of 2024. But to directly address what you're saying, they were actually selected as a priority project before this lighting improvement. So you could say we're going a little bit out of order, quite frankly. These improvements are a bit more simple to execute. They don't require the level of planning and engagement with the neighborhood. But yes, still are plans and funding available to do the Los Amigos Park improvements. This is just coming a little bit early to you because it's a bit more implementable based on what the improvement actually is being a lighting.
Okay, so that project is still ongoing?
It is. It is. Yep, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? And there are none, and that motion carries. Thank you, Director Sullivan. And Mr. Clerk?
Next communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager. Purchase of 2 solid waste rear load packers in the amount not to exceed $727,740, funded from 81500 vehicle/surf. I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of 2 rear load packer waste collection vehicles from McNewson in the amount of $727,740. That's $363,870 each. Funding will be through Department 168 Solid Waste Fund 81500 vehicle/surf.
I made a mistake. I thought it was Mr. LaFleur that would be here, but Michael, I can't see your last name.
Rush.
Oh, Rush, okay, thank you. Go ahead, please. Mr. Rush?
Michael Rush, Fleet Maintenance Manager. I'm here on Jeff LaFleur, the Superintendent of Solid Waste behalf. These 2 rear load packers are a scheduled surf purchase. It is a like-for-like purchase for the 2 units that we are purchasing. The older units will be kept as backline units until they are no longer feasible for repairs or use for the city, where they'll then be sold or auctioned off. Happy to answer any questions you have with these.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Rush. Mr. Clerk?
Next communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, in regard to change order 3 for paving program contract 1 in the amount of $3,891,763, funded from 54210 Construction Services/bond. I'll make a motion to approve change order 3 for the 2023 paving program contract 1 to Continental Paving Incorporated in the amount of $3,891,763. Funding will be through Department 160, Admin/Engineering, Fund 54210, Construction Services/bond.
Before Mr. Hudson speaks, I just want to I often get people question saying, does the Finance Committee approve everything that comes through? And I always let everybody know that anything over $1 million or any multi-year contract always goes from here to the Board of Aldermen. So this and the next one are those that will be forwarded to the Board of Aldermen with our recommendation. So, Mr. Hudson, please.
Thank you. Good evening. Dan Hudson, City Engineer. As noted in the motion before you is a proposed change order with Continental Paving. Continental Paving was the low bidder on one of our paving contracts last year, contract number 1. I'm sure you all noticed them paving Main Street last year. Job went very well. We're very happy with their performance. We're seeking to amend their contract to include additional paving in 2024. That would be on Amherst Street, East Dunstable Road, Main Street, Manchester Street, Pine Street, Spitbrook Road, and West Hollis Street. Those are arterial roadways, which was the contract won last year. So we feel that they're well suited for that. They've agreed to hold their pricing from last year. So we are seeking your approval on this change order.
I was just going to ask any questions. Yes, Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you so much for pointing out that it's new work to be done, because oftentimes I see change order of like an existing job, and something's come up with cost, run into a boulder, whatever it might be. But I appreciate the further explanation that it's more to be done versus the cost of a product that was already bid out.
Alderman Clemmons.
So for Main Street, can you tell me approximately, it says from Canal to Amherst Street, so that's the portion that's up past the bridge, correct? So like past the railroad tracks?
Yes, correct. So my understanding, and Deputy City Engineer Mark Saunders is here. If I make a mistake, he can come correct me. But our intent is to continue the paving that was done. We went beyond the railroad track this year. It's to pave up the hill and then out Amherst Street to roundabout Broad Street. So it's basically continuing that arterial paving to the north.
Okay. And just a follow-up
Yes.
question. When, do you know when that work is scheduled to be done? Like, is it gonna be done earlier in the year, later, in the middle of summer?
Do you know, Mark? Yeah, I'll have Mark come up and
Sure.
address it.
Good evening, Mark Saunders, Deputy City Engineer. As of right now, we do not have a firm set schedule on when the work will be done. With that being said, we do have some drainage improvements in the Main Street Canal area that has to get done before the paving can happen. So if that all goes well, they can get out there. If everything gets approved, April, May timeframe, then the paving will most likely happen July, August.
Okay.
Yes, please continue.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank you for, for the hard work on this. Obviously, getting them to agree to hold their prices is a great thing for the taxpayers, and so this is something that I certainly will support.
And I would like to add to that, as much of this is in my ward, and knowing what the traffic is like coming down Amherst Street to Main Street, as much heads up as we can get to redirect the traffic, just like we had to do with the bridge and the railroad tracks. So this will continue after, as you said, this will continue after the railroad tracks up to Broad Street, from up Amherst and so on. I know right after the railroad tracks, I think I contacted you and said, there's still a little bump here. I was whining, yes. But yeah, as much heads up as we can get to let people know, to redirect them and not go through that area. We have Franklin Street School there as well. So if July, August is not going to affect them, so that won't be a problem. But if we did do it after August or even during the school year, it will definitely have an effect on them. So I do appreciate as much heads up, whether it be those big signs saying, guess what we're doing? Letting the aldermen know, that would be wonderful. I'd appreciate it.
Yes,
Are there any other questions on this one? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? And that motion carries as well. And that will be forwarded to the Board of Aldermen. Mr. Hudson, I'm sorry, Mr. Clerk. Yes, please.
Next, communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, in regard to paving program, contract 2, change order 3, in the amount not to exceed $5,160,387.50, funded from 54210 construction service / bond. I'll make a motion to approve change order 3 for the 2023 paving program, contract 2 to Sunshine Paving Corporation, in the amount not to exceed $5,160,387.50. Funding will be through Department 160, Admin Engineering, Fund 54210, Construction Services / Bond.
I've sat there. It is difficult to say these things, so. Mr. Hudson, please.
Thank you again, Dan Hudson, City Engineer. So this is another proposed change order to last year's paving program. Again, this is for new work, as was pointed out, not redo of work or anything to that nature. This one is with Sunshine Paving. They won contract 2 last year, which is the, more of the local roads and that sort of thing. This is for about 11.5 miles of additional paving. Sunshine Paving has been the low bidder on our paving contracts for the last 6 contracts, so they've regularly been a low bidder. This proposal, we negotiated with them. They were not able to hold their pricing, so it is a proposed increase. I think the increase overall total is around 8.9% or something like that. They were able to hold most of their items, but did have to increase some. There's 3 items that they had to increase above the 10% threshold, which we usually like to stay under. But there is provisions in the ordinances for changes in market conditions. So those 3 items were cold planing the roadway, polyethylene pipe for drainage, and flaggers. 2 of those 3 items are sub work, and in talking to them, what they're passing along is their rates they're receiving from their subs. I'm sure, as everybody's aware, there's been increases in labor costs and that sort of thing. So, and the last item for pipe, they significantly underbid all the other bidders on that item. And then going back and assessing it, it really was too low. Probably lost money on that item last year, but so they're asking to increase the price, and they've done that. Still within the range of what the bids were last year from the other bidders on that item, so we feel comfortable with that as well. With that, I'd be happy to address any questions.
Like the other contract, these are new, and as we're going forward, I meant to mention at the last one, we're also doing the ADA ramps at all the intersection type things and so on. I noticed in both of the contracts. So those, as we go forward with these new contracts, that's what we're doing as well, correct?
Absolutely, yes. We are. It's challenging sometimes, but that is part of the work. First year, we added all those ramps into the project. It was challenging, but we worked through that. Have a good program now, good process. So that work is being accomplished with less disruption to the actual paving as it was originally. But yeah, that is. We're making a lot of headway on that. I think last year we did about 150 ADA ramps, which is tremendous progress in terms of addressing needs in the city for proper access to the sidewalk systems.
I see it even in neighborhoods and so on. Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you. Question, are any of these streets going to be entirely dug up and redone, or is this milling and then repaving over? What's there?
I'll call up and Engineer Saunders as well. I know we do reclaim sometimes, and I just don't recall.
There are.
Yeah, we do have reclaimed streets, yeah.
Good evening, Mark Saunders, Deputy City Engineer. So, yeah, as Engineer Hudson said, there is a mix. The 2 treatments we're looking at is going to be a mill and overlay and a reclaim. Based on the condition of the road, if you catch it before it falls into a state of complete disrepair, you can use less of a treatment where there's cost savings, and that's just when you scarify the road, we're going to go down 2 inches and put back those 2 inches. Roads that have been kind of fell into that failure category, we will be reclaiming them. We'll actually pulverize the entire asphalt and mix it in with the base gravels, regrade it, repave it. The split, it's typically about a 70-30 split between mill and overlay and reclaim for this contract.
Yes,
If I
please.
could. Yeah, the reason I ask is because I'm very familiar with Wasson Ave and Pershing Street, and when the fire trucks come from Lake Street and they're going down to wherever, they use that as a cut-through. They alternate between that and Fairview. And you can tell, because if you go down Wasson Ave, it's torn up between Lake and Kinsley, and I'm just curious if that's one of the streets that's gonna be completely redone.
As I see it here, it looks like it's going to be the 2-inch mill and overlay. I know Wasson Ave was scheduled for some gas work, so when they go in, they do their final cutbacks, it does breathe life back into the asphalt. So I believe they have to finish that and go from there. We do have items in the contract, and just in case the treatment doesn't quite match the roadway. So if we go into a roadway and we scarify it, and there's spots that are completely blown out, we do have items through this contract, which one of the main ones is roadway X and regrade. Well, we'll go in and we'll cut the section of that roadway out and patch it so that it holds better, so that we're not paving over something that's going to deteriorate. So we do have some tools in the toolbook if the treatment isn't 100% correct, but we are trying to be fiscally responsible to get the most life out of the road with the treatment that matches at the condition of the time.
Okay, all right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Alderman Clevens. Alderman Ryan?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just a statement. I won't be supporting this particular vendor. I'm not averse to the work being done, but I've just received too many complaints from residents regarding damage to their property from this vendor, lack of professional response, saying the check's in the mail for the damaged property. We're not talking about the right-of-way and accidentally putting something on city property. We're talking about damage to actual homeowners' property. In addition to complaints that I've received about the professionalism of the flaggers during construction as well. I know we've discussed this in the past, but I just can't commit to providing, money, $5 million to people, a vendor who doesn't take the accountability for the damage they've done to a taxpayer of the city, and not just that, not be responsive, and then mislead them and say the check's in the mail, and then I have to get Lauren Byers involved to actually get the check to these folks. So that is out of respect for the taxpayer, I won't be supporting this vendor.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions? I do have one, and looking at the list that's within this document, and I'm glad to see some of the ones within my ward, such as Mount Pleasant Street. As small as that pave is going to be, that road is in rough shape. I see Charles Street, Locust, so many of those are in dire need. So I thank you, and Alderman Moran, I respect your comments. It's important to get that out, so thank you. Thank you for doing that. Are there any other comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
No.
And that motion carries with one in oppose. Thank you. Mr. Clerk?
Next communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, in regard to contract for 2024 paving management engineering services in the amount of $400,000 funded from 53107 Architect and Engineering Services / bond. I'll make a motion to approve the engineering services contract for the management and construction administration of the paving program with Hayner Swanson, Inc. in the amount of $400,000. Funding will be through Department 160, Admin / Engineering, Fund 53107, Architect and Engineering Services / bond.
Mr. Hudson, seems like
Thank you,
we
Dana.
have you for most of these.
Excuse me, sorry, I'll stop introducing myself every time. Excuse me, I apologize.
That's okay.
Thank you. We just, approved moving forward about $9 million with paving. That's a large amount of paving, so engineering in Public Works, we require some support managing this program. So we are proposing to continue to contract with Hayner Swanson. They're a local company. They also support our sewer program, so having the same engineering company on both those programs helps with the coordination and those sorts of things. $400,000 sounds like a lot of money, but on a percentage basis, this is a very good value for the city in terms of the support we get versus the level amount of work we're doing. So they've been good to work with and kind of work as an extension of our staff, and we therefore are requesting to continue that relationship.
I appreciate that, and I often get questions from people saying, you know, who's managing this, and I always say our engineering department, but it's nice that you have a partner to help with that and offload some of that, because we use you on a lot of things. So, are there any questions or comments? Alderman Govea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just, this is more for me, but is this something you couldn't handle managing fully in-house? Is that the reason why we contract out for it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We have 2 inspectors that cover all the work in the city, all the other work in the city. You know, we have hundreds of permits per year for gas work, water work, subdivision work. So, yeah, we're struggling keeping up with that amount of work with those 2, and they couldn't take on this level of effort. Mr. Saunders and I don't have a lot more hair left to pull out, so this really helps us keep eyes on all the work that's occurring out there. We would have to hire additional staff if we didn't have this contract in order to be able to continue this level of work.
Okay. Yeah, and for those that are out there that are listening, hiring additional staff is not just the cost of their salary, but the cost of their benefits and time off and so on. And it would be an ongoing, so I think $400,000 does seem like a very good contract. And Alderman Clemens.
Yeah, I was going to ask something along the lines. Have you discussed that at all, of whether or not it would be less expensive to internally hire folks versus doing the contract?
We haven't investigated that fully. I mean, we do have a winter season. We don't do much paving in the winter, so that's another reason that this is advantageous for us. We get the support we need when we need it in the summer, but we don't have people that, you know, are underutilized, so to speak, in the winter. Our 2 inspectors now, there's still work going on in the city, so there's still things to inspect, but they're also you know, recording and filing things from the summer previous. So we do keep them busy, but yeah, if we had to hire, say, a couple more inspectors, we would in the winter we'd have too many, and in the summer, you know, we'd be doing okay. But this relationship seems to work well, hiring the staff for the period of the year that we need it.
Okay.
Alderman Clemens, any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 And those opposed? And that motion carries. Mr. Clerk?
Next, communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, in regard to contract services for Nashua High School South Pedestrian Bridge in the amount of $735,695, funded from 54210 Construction Services / Capital and Trust. I'm going to make a motion to approve and award the construction contract for the Nashua High School South Pedestrian Bridge project to Eve Works Corporation in the amount of $735,695. Funding will be through Department 160, Admin / Engineering, Fund 54210, Construction Services / Capital and Trust.
Looks like you're up again, Mr.
I'm up again,
Hudson.
great.
Yes.
So you may recall we ran into an unfortunate situation where a pedestrian bridge in Mine Falls Park, adjacent to Nashua High School South, fell into disrepair. We were notified by a resident that one side of the bridge was sagging, and we brought our bridge engineer down immediately, and they assessed it, and were very concerned, and we ended up closing the bridge. We purchased a temporary pedestrian bridge to continue access across the canal, but that other bridge needed to be removed, and we went through a process of design of a replacement bridge, and then we bid that out. And received 5 bids from contractors. Everox Corporation of Tilton, New Hampshire was the low bidder. We had bid out with an out alternate, which was to relocate the temporary bridge over to Rotary Park, but there's a question about the condition of the dam that Pennachuck owns there, and whether that, you know, that needs to be removed or rehab, that sort of thing. So it's premature to set a bridge over there. So we're just moving forward with awarding the base bid of this project, which includes that replacement bridge. The replacement bridge will be a 110-foot span, prefabricated steel truss bridge with a concrete deck. The new bridge will be rated for 10 tons, so it will be able to accommodate emergency vehicle access and those sorts of things into the park. Be happy to address any questions.
That's wonderful to hear. Alderman Clemmons?
Thank you. So we are keeping the temporary bridge though, right, for future use of some?
Correct. So Everox, once we award this contract, they have to order the replacement bridge. It's probably going to be maybe another year before it gets here because of the lead time. So that bridge is going to remain until we can't leave it anymore because it's in conflict with proposed work. But yeah, this contract involves removing that and at this point in time storing it somewhere in Nashua at our direction. The disposition of that bridge, we can decide later. We could use it somewhere else. Possibly we could sell it to someone else. So those decisions will have to be made at a later date. But we're not giving back this bridge or anything like that. That's still our bridge until we decide to do something different.
Are there any, Alderwoman Timmons?
Yes, thank you. I think this is a good idea to replace that bridge, but I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to picturize where the bridge is and how often that bridge is used, because I'm around there a lot, and I just want to know the foot traffic of that bridge.
It was pretty heavily utilized because it's kind of a connection to neighborhoods on the north side of the river and canal to the south side. So this is on the path that will connect you over to Lincoln Park in that area. So yeah, we as soon as we closed it, we had a lot of cries for what we're going to do. We get cross country kids run across it, and they have events and that sort of thing. So so that's why we did reach out and secure the temporary bridge because we knew this was going to be out of service for a while. So yeah, it is heavily in heavy demand and therefore appropriate to replace.
Any other question? I 100% agree. As a person who loves that loop, that's one of my favorite loops, going alongside the river. You can't go further up towards Conway or any that way, because then you have all that rocky roads. A lot of the bikes use that. The bicycles use it as well. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. And that opposed? And that motion carries as well. Mr. Clerk.
Next, communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, in regards to contract for engineering services in the amount of $99,403, funded from 53107, Architect and Engineering Services / Capital. I'll make a motion to approve the award of construction engineering service contract for the Nashua High School South Pedestrian Bridge Project to Hoyle, Tanner and Associates in the amount of $99,403. Funding will be through Department 160, Admin / Engineering, Fund 53107, Architect and Engineering Services / Capital.
Mr. Hudson.
Thank you. So this is the construction phase engineering support for the bridge that we were just talking about. Hoyle Tanner is our bridge engineer. They're doing a bunch of bridge projects in the city for us currently. They designed this bridge, and we're seeking to continue their services through construction. They'll help with, managing contractor, doing structural shop submittal reviews and all those sorts of things that are required to ensure that we get the bridge that we spec'd out and that it's constructed appropriately.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Alderman Govea.
Thank you. Same as kind of my last question. So this isn't a task that could be handled in-house?
No, this is an area of expertise that we don't really have on staff, structural engineering. We have staff that have, could dabble in it a little bit, but
Sure.
not to the level that I want them to take on this project and certify that everything was done in accordance with structural engineering requirements.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And that motion carries as well. Mr. Clerk?
Next, communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, in regard to contract for engineering services in the amount of $187,441, funded from 54210, Construction Services / Stormwater Abatement. I'll make a motion to approve the engineering services for task required by the EPA MS4 permit with Hazen and Sawyer PC in the amount of $187,441, Funding will be through Department 169 Wastewater, Fund 54210, Construction Services / Stormwater Abatement.
Mr. Hudson, you're up for this one as well?
Thank you. This is my last one, I think.
I think it is too, yes.
So the city falls under the 2017 Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Permit from EPA, or the MS4 permit, as many have heard of. That allows us to discharge stormwater to the waterways in the city. But that requires that we do certain things. We need to file an annual report. We need to sample waterways to assess if there's any illicit discharges and that sort of thing. And if we find any, we have to chase those upstream until we can resolve them. The city has at least 359 outfalls. Well, the first task is we have to locate them all, map them, and all those sorts of things. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We do have in-house staff that also works with this consultant, working through the various things that we need to do to be in compliance with the permit. But we do rely on their expertise to assist us with that, and to provide the horsepower, so to speak, to do the things that need to be done. This contract would carry us through 2025. It's all being funded out of this year's funds, so we're not encumbering any future budgets. But this would contract us through filing the permit in 2025, so it's the 2024 and 2025 permit, which get filed in September each year. Again, to keep us in compliance with EPA requirements. I'd be happy to address any questions.
Does this have anything in addition to the CSOs, the combined sewer, or is this just the regular stormwater?
Yeah, the CSOs fall under different permitting regime, because that's, that's combined sewer overflow, so it's sanitary and stormwater. But yeah, as we separate, so we have separated stormwater. The separated stormwater is what this permit is. And we do have a lot of areas like that. So yeah, I said we had 359 outfalls. We have more than that because we have the CSOs, right? It kind of goes hand in hand, but they are under separate permits, and this one's for the stormwater portion.
Okay. Are there any questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. And Mr. Hudson, I think you're off the
thank you
hook
very
now.
much. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Mr. Clerk.
Next communication from Amy Gerard, Purchasing Manager, in regard to contract for COVID-19 prevention support at the Nashua Soup Kitchen and Shelter in the amount of $50,000 funded from 53628 Contract Services / Grant FY24 Enhanced Detection Grant. I'll make a motion to accept, place on file, and approve a contract for services for increased staff compensation, increased services, and purchase of COVID-19 supplies to help support safe accommodations at the shelter with Nashua Soup Kitchen and Shelter in the amount of $50,000. Said contract to expire on April 30, 2024. Funding will be through Department 171 Community Service Fund 53628 Contract Services / Grant FY24 Enhanced Detection Grant.
Director Bagley.
Yes, good evening, Director Bagley for the City of Nashua's Division of Public Health and Community Services. This contract will support the continuation of safe sheltering for individuals that are unhoused at the Nashua Soup Kitchen and Shelter. The Nashua Soup Kitchen and Shelter received additional emergency funds from the state to provide shelter, and usually we expect to see the numbers kind of ramp up as the time goes on. They started early. We knew that that was going to be the case, and so this $50,000 was set aside out of the Enhanced Detection Grant, which focuses on community health worker support as well as COVID response efforts. And so at the Nashua Soup Kitchen and Shelter, this will support additional staffing that they will have that will provide overtime, as well as mentioned in a memo, anything that will help decompress at the shelter so that folks aren't as close together, and then also provide for testing and some isolation recommendations that will be needed with the onset of COVID. It has been reported already that the shelter has been impacted by COVID, where the staffing was impacted, and so then that requires additional overtime for staff to be able to provide the services at the soup kitchen and shelter.
Just one quick question, and I think you already said it, but this funding is coming out of the DHHS money?
Correct.
So it's not coming out of taxpayers' budgeted money, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Alderman Moran, I just want to
You'll
call you
get it
Director
right
Moran.
once tonight. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you, Director Bagley. I think this is a great use of funds, and I can't think of a better, well, I can probably think of a better, great organizations, but a great organization that can receive these funds to support their staffing that have been impacted by COVID-19 and the other impacts that you're looking to prevent in regards to COVID. So I appreciate you bringing this forth to send the money to the soup kitchen. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments? No. Thank you. So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? And that is approved. I know, it just, take my words away and I'm lost. Thank you, Director Bagley.
All right, thank you for your support on that.
I'm thinking, do I handle this one differently? Unfinished business
There's none.
and new business.
R-24-008, authorizing the mayor to enter into a Fourth Amendment to concession agreement with Granite Diamond LLC. I'll make a motion to recommend final passage.
Okay. Do we have anybody to speak on this? Mr. Conant?
Good evening, everyone. Superintendent Brian Conant, the Parks and Recreation Department. This is to yearly renewal of the lease at Holman Stadium that the Silver Knights use. This contract was started in 2019, went for 2 years, and 5 years after that, they're allowed to sign a 1-year lease. I'd be happy to answer any questions on this if there are any.
Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? And that motion carries as well. Thank you,
you.
Mr. Conant. New business ordinances?
There is none.
Records of expenditure.
I'm going to move that the Finance Committee has compiled with city charter and ordinances pertaining to the record of expenditures for the period from January 12th, 2024 to February 1st, 2024.
Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, all of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed? And that motion carries as well. General discussion? Public comment? Remarks by the alderman. Alderman Moran.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm sure everyone is listening at home who doesn't have anything to do next Saturday night, a delayed Valentine's dinner perhaps. But Involved Impact is putting on a night of fire. I'm not going to try to utilize the Spanish language because I would just not do it justice. But February 17th from 6 to 9 at Soul Sisters, I'm sure everyone hasn't tasted Kendra's fine food in one way or another, from the stroll to all these other events. I know I've had her cater my agency lunch at times as well. But 30 Temple Street, 6 to 9 p.m. Enjoy Latin food and fun, and all the proceeds go to Involved Impact, a great nonprofit in the city. I'm sure we'll see everyone here next Saturday night.
Thank you. I would love to, but I can't. Any other comments, questions?
I have one.
Alderwoman Timmons.
All right, thank you. They do have a Chinese New Year celebration, which is on Saturday the 10th from 4 to 7 at the Y, Nashua Y.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be exciting as well. Any other comments, questions? I just want to make a comment that in the past couple of weeks, we've lost a lot of really good citizens, and yesterday I'd heard about the passing of ex-Commissioner Grant. He has served the city extraordinarily well. It was a shock to hear. I know he had been in ill health, but still, we lost Mr. Cadis and Mr. Savage, and it just, I'm tired of picking up the newspaper and seeing one more name there. it is devastating to the city, but to the Grant family, friends, and his fire associates, my condolences. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, Alderman Clemmons, do you have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
That motion to adjourn, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And that motion carries, and we adjourn at 7:50 PM.